Welcome to the 25th edition of Women's Wrestling Weekly, the show. I am Kyle Klingman, joined by Scott Beck. And Scott, sweet vindication for me. Iowa was wrong. I was right. It is Val Solorio, and they have it wrong. They have it Solorio on the pronunciation guide. I got that from Nate Solorio, Val's dad, straight from him. So they have not taken it down on the Iowa roster page. It still says Solorio. So if you ever go there and you see that it's Solorio, just know that I am right. They're wrong. It's Solorio, Scott.
Okay, and Nate's forgiving you then for tricking him with a phone call when you dialed in and scaring him a little bit, but I'm glad to see you right on that one, Kyle.
Yeah, and I wasn't tricking him. He just thought it was going to be the University of Iowa, and he pulled over to the side of the road. He was so excited, so disappointed that it was me. I could hear it in his voice that he didn't want it to be me. He wanted it to be Clarissa or Gary Mayab or Tanya Verbeek. He got me, but
Funny.
she's there now, so it all worked out.
Yeah, good stuff.
So we have some more. I still have a list here. So we were wrong on a couple last week just by a letter. We were talking about the Grace Bullen match. We said Grace Bullen, and it's Irina Rîngaci, and we were saying Rîngaci. And as we talked about that match in the European finals, it lived up to the billing. They've already called it the best match of the year so far. We went back and watched it. It was fantastic.
As expected, that was a great match. I was correct in my prediction that there would be some double legs involved by Bullen. And I remember years ago when Lee Miracle, he was like the first one that got a foreigner in. And I love that he did this actually, just a random aside. So Kayla Miracle's at Campbellsville, winning national title after national title, making age group world team. And Lee Miracle saw Grace Bullen, and I remember he actually pronounced it properly at the time. So I butchered it since with Bullen. But his first thing was like, wow, this young lady's in Kayla's weight class and she's really good. Hey, why don't I bring her here to go to college and train? And I love that concept that you bring the best, so that you can train with them. And they actually turned out being in the same weight class. And I believe Kayla dropped a weight for nationals. Bullen won, even though Megan Black at the time had been undefeated, and Bullen kind of slipped in and didn't lose that year. Grace Bullen hit a couple of doubles. What Rîngaci, as opposed to Rîngaci, which I butchered, did, she had some sweet leg attacks, got in some singles. There was some scrambles. It was a back and forth match until toward the end of the match. Rîngaci hit like a cement mixer, and Bullen came out on top as like a 2-2, I believe, because she kind of gave up exposure, stopped her, and then actually barred her. And Rîngaci was doing the right thing. She was up on her knees. She wasn't flat to create the pressure. And Bullen was able to turn with bars and kind of end the match there with Rîngaci on her back. But great match. Lived up to billing and then some. And, that brings me to another side with Grace Bullen, who had, we were talking about how if you watch enough wrestling, you see people lose matches in ways that you almost can't believe, but it happens, and it's going to happen to pretty much everybody. In the Olympics, it just made me think back that, Grace Bullen was wrestling Matoki from Japan, who was a two-time world silver, not won a world title yet. Towards the end of the match, they went up top. Bullen got roped into going up top with Matoki, got thrown and pinned, and, she probably shouldn't have been in that position. Gave up a heartbreaker, came back, and won an Olympic bronze medal, but it was it was really just a match that you talk about like a miracle win by Matoki, who then dominated Kolodenko from Ukraine in the finals. It made me think, and then I did another deep dive and went back, and it made me remember when Anastasia Nichita, which I'm probably butchering the name, from Moldova in the 2021 Olympics, was wrestling Adekore from Nigeria. So if somebody could correct that, we'd appreciate it. She was down 8-0 in the first round, and then stuck her with lateral drop and pinned her. And then Nichita in the next round was actually winning, and then lost to Kurchina from Belarus. So just crazy stuff happens. High-level people make mistakes too, get in positions maybe they shouldn't be, or just, again, sometimes you just are in a position that somebody just does a good move and you lose. So just that kind of took me in a wormhole, and it's fun to relive some of those matches and go back.
It is crazy because even thinking about Helen Maroulis in her Olympic finals match in 2016, you would think that you wouldn't throw a desperation headlock as the greatest of all time, but that's what happened. And talk about losing in the strangest ways. That happened in the Olympic finals, and Helen got the gold, and one of the all-time greats had to settle for silver, even though she won 16 times before that.
Yeah, I mean, and that was kind of interesting because I think I'm trying to remember. I think Helen was up 1-0 and might have gotten a step up point. I could be wrong, but just positionally in that match against Yoshida was just it's technically in such good position the whole match. She also, I know her, Helen and Valentina Kalika had really worked on defending a low sweep single with a shin wizard, which Helen does as good as anybody in the world, and it frustrated you. Think about it. You're gonna, wrestle Yoshida, 13-time world champ, 3-time Olympic champ, and frustrate her into like throwing like a desperation headlock near out of bounds and giving up the two, which kind of solidified the match. It just shows you that if you're in good position and somebody can't do anything, even the best of the best of the best can get frustrated and make mistakes.
A few more names as we end this wormhole that we have gone down of names, and it's
I'm
probably going
playing
to continue.
wormhole, but
Okay,
go ahead.
we're going to continue on this, but maybe the toughest of all time. Her name's Sierra Chiesa, and we'll put the name up there. You'll see why it's so hard because it's CH, so everyone thinks it's Chessie or Chisi.
Yes, oh yeah,
Chiesa.
yes.
Another one, the Presbyterian women's coach, Brian Vutianitis. Brian Vutianitis, everyone gets it wrong. I actually called his cell phone during the U23 Pan Ams, knowing he was coaching, so I could listen to the voicemail. It didn't go through, but then he texted and said, "Did you want something?" I said, "I wanted to figure out how to pronounce your last name." He texted it to me. I voicemailed it to him. He said, "You nailed it." So it's Brian
Nice.
Vutianitis. Also, on the Ashley Sword Christian Flavin, we had said maybe Christian should become Christian Sword. Ashley chimed in and said Christian's probably going to want to fight you for that. Christian said that he's rolling his eyes right now on that. So that probably didn't go over well with the Flavin family. So we'll go with the Flavins for Christian and Ashley because I don't want to fight Christian.
I understand. I'm with you.
And also on the Gao Showa Whitethorn, that was at the NCAA championships or the NCWWCs. I was so excited because I really had been practicing that name 500 times. She was on press row because she had been dealing with concussions, so they brought her on in a media role. I saw her name there and said, "I'm so excited about this." And she was sitting there. It was almost like a movie. I was able to come up from behind and say, "Hey, Gao Showa, how are you doing?" And when I got talking to her, she said, "I thought it was someone I knew because you said it right." So once again, the perks of saying someone's name right
It means a lot to people. Good job, Kyle.
or trying to do it right. Now
Yep.
on to the mailbag. Joe Jamison of Ursinus. It is not Jameson, as some people probably think. He had some comments about what's going to happen with the NCAA, or they like it to be the NCAA. Joe Jamison, Ursinus is in Collegeville, Pennsylvania, and he absolutely despises the University of Iowa. This isn't just the women's program, it goes back to the men. He said it's difficult right now to hate Iowa because he likes the coaches so much, but he just said Iowa knows how unlevel the playing field is. They're going to be the program every girl wants to go to because they're Iowa. And then on the qualification, he said anything less than 240 student athletes at the Women's NCAA Wrestling Championship will be an absolute slap in the face and will all but guarantee D3 splitting off as soon as possible. Most D3 programs are already in a competitive disadvantage with no athletic scholarships, smaller budgets, and less resources. Why would D3 stay with brackets of 21 or 18 when we could have our own championship with brackets of 16? So that is Joe Jamison, a D3 program in Ursinus. Your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, you have two opposing, issues here. Like you have the one view, which we've heard. I think it was from Ashley Flavin, but maybe I'm wrong. But where like you don't want to have too much dilution with the quality. You're just putting numbers in, it's a little diminished, but which I don't have a horrible problem with because I like the idea that the top seeds can ease their way into a tournament to begin with. But then you have the teams with the non-competitive competitive disadvantage where they're basically, they want to have their athletes come in. And if it's virtually impossible to qualify, they're going to be very disenchanted and look to leave. So, I was a believer in a 32-person bracket, or at the very least, maybe a 24 with wild cards. But if it's to the exclusion, I don't know if there's enough Division I teams right now. If you go to 10, there just aren't enough to take all the spots. So you probably don't have to worry about that right away, right? If you could only get one per Division I team, I don't care how good they are. They can only get 6 teams at the moment, or at most, as you bring in a couple more. So I don't think that'll be a near-term problem, but it might be an evolving problem. Again, it's really hard to assess the landscape until we have all the information and we have some more clarity.
My understanding is that D3 would split off as the non-scholarship, and then for the foreseeable future, because there are so few Division I programs right now, there's 4, and then there'll be that 5th coming up with Delaware State, and then hopefully Tarleton State, hopefully Lehigh, and then hopefully a few others down the road that you can get to 10. It would be more of a non-scholarship and a scholarship championship. So for the time being, I hope they keep it all together for a while and just take it slow.
Exactly. I
And
prefer that.
yeah, just take it slow, have everyone together for a while, and then just evaluate as you go along. I hope they don't go down to 16. I hope it's minimum of 24, because he's right. You're going to be at a competitive disadvantage if you're a D3 program because of resources and all those things. So you got to have it a little bit so you can get some of those girls to the championship event.
Yeah. Yeah, and or maybe you make some wild card rule where at least half the wild cards have to be Division III. I don't know, but we went from one tournament, right, WCWA, to these other tournaments, and then we split up to 2. But I don't want to just keep splitting until it's all in place down the road. So, back to what I had said episodes ago, I'd rather they proceed cautiously and then assess and then adjust.
So as it stands today, we still don't know what's going to
Yeah.
happen. But that's interesting insight from Joe about how he sees this going. That if it is 16, it's looking like D3 is probably going to split off, because they say, how are we going to ever get to the national tournament because we are at a disadvantage.
Well, yeah. I mean, and I think, everybody's going to angle and have their perspective on what's best for them and their team. So I hope people try to look at it from all angles and make the best decisions for the sport, not just the micro decision, for their team or their division.
As it relates to high school commitments, we're seeing those come in for the seniors. They're filling up. It's interesting to see where they go. One of the things that's interesting right now is that King University has not gotten that big name like they typically do. And it goes back to what you said. Having someone hired late in the game really hurt them on recruiting. So maybe the assumption is we can retain a lot of those girls, but Brett Fry has a big task ahead of him because he did lose all that recruiting cycle. He's getting in the mix right now. So King University is behind right now.
Well, there's a price to pay for non-clarity, and they'll pay it. Maybe he can make up some of it in the portal, or just drops a year kind of. It has to retain, but it absolutely has an effect and a toll, and that's the price. So we'll see what happens. I mean, it's a recoverable price, but it could hurt them in the near term.
Scott, I love this process so much of figuring out who the 10 women for the U.S. World Team are going to be, and it starts this weekend in Las Vegas for the U.S. Open. Guaranteed spots for the champion across the board for Final X, which is the final World Team Trial spot, best of 3 series that will take place in New Jersey in June. So 2 of those spots have been allocated. Macey Kilty at 65 kilos, and we just got Helen Maroulis at 57 kilograms. She's coming back for at least this year. What were your thoughts when you saw that Helen is going to be back at it again, at least for one more year?
She played a little in jiu-jitsu. I think she loves wrestling. I'm not trying to speak for her, but I know she loves wrestling. She's exceptionally good, and she's probably like, until proven wrong, until I can't perform, but she still performs at an exceptionally high level. Can beat anybody in the world, obviously, and until proven wrong has hammered anyone domestically, and she's probably like I want to see where I am. It does, and I think she would say, just because she's wrestling this year says nothing about what she'll do in 3 years, and is going to take things one step at a time. I love watching her wrestle, so it makes it tough for anybody else to make the team at that weight. But you never know, and Helen's good for the sport.
Let's get into the questions we need answered going into the U.S. Open. Question number one: will Audrey Jimenez emerge as this country's next 50-kilogram star? We talked about how deep this weight class has been in the United States historically. Of course, it's even deeper historically for Japan. But we saw how good Audrey Jimenez looked after a little bit of a break. I think she was injured. She looked fantastic at women's nationals, just dominated, blitzed through the U20 World Team Trials. Will that carry over to the U.S. Open? Will she dominate there? Will she get to Final X, make the world team, and can she medal?
Well, I would, before we start talking about whether she medals or not, we'll go to the making the team. It's a very deep weight class, but I think there's a tier one, which would be Audrey Jimenez, Aaron Golson, and Emily Shilson if she's back to form. Golson has beaten Shilson a couple times recently. I don't know where she was injury wise, into that tournament, even though she competed. Jimenez has beaten Golson, I believe, at Tech Fall a couple times. So, I'd say you have to give the nod right now to Jimenez, but I'm not counting out Golson or Shilson yet. They'll have to prove, they can beat her, and they're going to ultimately have to beat her twice. And it doesn't mean that somebody else can't get hot and come through. Assuming, let's just say, things hold to form, Jimenez makes the world team. Could she medal? Japan's exceptionally difficult at the weight. I'm assuming Sasaki will wrestle. If not, they have, Yoshimoto. They have three people that are very good at the weight class, three or four deep, very solid. Japan will medal, barring shocks at the weight. And there's other tough contenders in some of the other countries. Mongolia is always good. That name I'm not going to attempt to pronounce because I butchered it. I don't even know how to butcher it, actually. She's exceptionally solid and very good and very difficult to wrestle. China is always going to be tough. Fang is very good. So it's going to be difficult to medal. Is she capable of medaling? Yes, it will be. It will be difficult for U.S. to medal at 50 with a new body. Possible, difficult.
Question number two: how will previously injured wrestlers Emily Shilson, Mia Palumbo, who was out for the college season and is making her comeback at the U.S. Open, Tiare Ikei, who we've seen during college opens and is still just working her way back in, and Joye Levendusky, who got injured, took the coaching job at Southern Oregon, but I think she wants to go back into competition. How will they do at the U.S. Open? I think it's probably case by case, depending on who it is and what the injury is. Concussions are always such a funny thing when you're dealing with Emily Shilson and Ikei in that situation. They're so good, but one thing, and we saw that at the Bill Farrell, just can set you off and just can affect you the entire tournament. So just on those two, it's just so hard to know because you don't know what's going to happen during any type of match, even if you know you can dominate someone.
Yeah, I mean, I think with the injuries, the biggest thing, and we had a physician on an injury say this, it's not just when the injury heals. It's can you mentally wrestle without thinking about the injury. And that was said something like, with the neck injury, it was like, what's going to determine how you're doing your career is not whether the injury is going to heal. The injury will heal. And concussions heal, but you can get another concussion if you re-hit it. But if you don't, they can be fine. But the question is, are you wrestling freely and wrestling without that in the back of your head? And to me, that's the biggest thing. And you don't know. And people, you take it on individual case by case scenario. Because some people, even if they're healed, in the back of their mind, they never wrestle as freely. Others let it go and can scrap and, are fine. So you just don't know. I don't know where people are going to be. We'll find out. It's, I could sit and predict it would be just a waste of words. We don't know. And we'll see. And then, some weights are more open than others. The upper weights, there's some hammers, in those upper weights. And, regardless of how Joy wrestles, she could be at the top of her form, but she's never beaten some of the people, So that's an issue. 53, is a pretty wide open weight. Now, if Tiare Ikei is at where she's been, she can contend to win that weight. Um, if she's tentative and still injured, like we saw her lose a match to somebody I wouldn't have thought she'd lose to in the college season, she just, we'll see where she is. If she's in true form, she can beat anybody. And, I'd argue the same thing. If Emily Shilson's in true form, she can go. Her accolades are phenomenal. One of the few people that won a youth, I don't know how many there are, if any. She's won a Youth Olympic Games, Cadet World, U20 World, U23 World title. That's a lot.
And when you look at that, it's just when you have your first competition back and it's this high level, you hope you can ease into it and get some matches under your belt and just start feeling a little bit. Because Alara Boyd, when she came back after an injury, she got to go to a college open and wrestle in that. But she said she was just so nervous coming back because you just don't know how you're going to hold up and how things are going to play out during a match. And so the nerves are part of it.
100%. And keep in mind, all these brackets are somewhere between, for the Women's Open, I believe, let's say they're 20 to 36 people. So there's going to be a lot of matches, and there are very, very few horrible, I hate to use the word for it, strike that. There are very few, unqualified competitors that aren't that good. So you got to be ready to go right away. And each round, as it progresses, it's just going to get tougher and tougher. So you have to trust your training, trust that you're prepared. And if you don't believe that you're ready to scrap hard, you shouldn't enter this tournament. You're not healed yet.
Third question. At 76 kilograms, will Kylie Welker get tested on her way to the U.S. Open? You have to assume that she will be the 1 seed. So semifinal matchup, she will not have to see Diamond Guilford or Yelena McCoyed. Will she dominate her way through and win the U.S. Open title?
Well, I would certainly expect her to dominate her way, at least to the finals. She's certainly capable of dominating the finals, but, Yelena and Diamond are very capable of scrapping with her. So if she's in top form, she's going to be tough to beat. She looked very good to me. Just getting more and more confident. She's very athletic. She started as a lighter weight. She's very physical. But, Yelena and Diamond are both very accomplished, savvy wrestlers. And I'd say if you say you put the gun in my head, I don't think she's just going to romp through them and romp through everybody. She'll probably romp along the way, but I'd expect it to be a competitive match. A finals match would be competitive.
If you can get the Yelena from a year and a half ago, she was the best in the world at one point for a certain amount of
We
time.
won 4 tournaments in a row, high level international tournaments.
And she won the World Cup, pinning a world champion who has just since retired. But there were so many people that, including some people at USA Wrestling, that said that may be the best person in the world. And that included when Kennedy Blades was in the weight class and Adeline Gray. So at her best, she is maybe the best in the world. And Diamond Guilford's gone back and forth. I think right now the series is at 7-6 in favor of McCoyed. And the last one you were on the call for, it was 3-3 at the Bill Farrell.
Great match.
So we're expecting that to be a semifinal match between Guilford and McCoyed. So that will probably be the best match of the tournament, just knowing how competitive that is.
Yeah, I mean, they've wrestled each other so many times, but they still both wrestle in those matches, which is fun to watch. It's not like they're sitting there trying to win 1-1 at a clock point. They opened up a little bit. Yeah, that Yelena, was unbelievable. And, I don't know exactly. She kind of dipped. I don't know what distractions were going on, whether it was mental, some personal issues, or physical, but she definitely dipped, but she's been getting back towards form. So that would be a very good match, and I think either of them, listen, somebody else could, beat them too. But, if we hold according to chalk, I think whoever will come out of the side of the bracket, believes they can beat Welker if they wrestle their match. I don't think they're handing her the tournament. I promise you.
You're right, but just based on what we've seen, Yelena and Guilford are just at a different level, maybe 2 or 3 levels above a lot of that competition. So unless something unforeseen happens that I can't imagine at this point, whether it's a fluky throw, which can happen. We saw it at the U23 Nationals and crazy things happen, but I think they're good enough that we can expect either Guilford and McCoyed wrestling Kylie Welker in the 76 kilogram finals.
I would expect that, but you never know.
Question number 4. Can anyone from the 65 kilogram field compete with Macey Kilty at Final X?
I mean, Kyle, it's a very solid field, but until proven wrong, I think that's going to be very difficult. It's a solid field, but Kilty wrestles very sound positionally, very calculated attacks, doesn't tend to make a lot of mistakes. And this is a 2 out of 3 series. So could there be a one-off throw or something in one match? Unlikely, but it could happen. But this is Kilty's to lose, and I just don't see. I think at best, some of these competitors could slow the matches down and try to keep them close and try to be stingy. But Macy's going to be very difficult to beat in a 3 match series at 65 kilograms. I just don't see that at the moment.
As we go into the U.S. Open, Jennifer Page is there. She won a bronze medal at the 2023 World Championships at 59 kilograms. What a cut it was to get down there. She was normally at 62 kilograms. Had a good Olympic trials at 62, and then has just moved up to 65. Got to the final mini tournament against Anya Drury and lost 4-0. Anya Drury and Page both in there. Drury got 5th at the National Collegiate Women's Wrestling Championships. So there's some names in there that can compete at 65 kilograms. Don't know who's going to come out there, but I think given all that she's accomplished, you have to think that if a Jen Page is ready to go, that she can make the finals at the U.S. Open.
Oh, for sure. I mean, Jen Page is, I just haven't seen her wrestling a lot. She's gone up a couple of weights, didn't look in top form, but when she's on, she's on. I mean, she was an absolute terror at 59, but that weight cut was exceptionally difficult. And then, up the weight class, she's beaten Miracle, she's beaten Kilty. I mean, I don't know where she is. I mean, if she's in top form, she's can beat anybody, so we just don't know, where she is and how much she's been wrestling.
Question number 5. What can we expect from Kayla Miracle in her first tournament back from the Olympic Games?
I expect her to look great and dominate. I mean, she's been wrestling hard. She's wrestling because she wants to wrestle. I think she's got some unfinished business in the world stage, and I'm expecting her to look great and dominate.
And then final question is at 53 kilograms, we have Sage Mortimer, who is a U23 world champion at 50. Looks like she's going to move up for the future up to a different weight class. 53 is about 116, equates to 117. I think she's going to wrestle there next season for college. How's she going to do with the transition? What do you think?
I mean, I think she'll do fine. I mean, it's very interesting to me, to be honest with you, because she wrestled at 50 basically and won the college tournament, and you'd think she'd go 50 with that kind of weight open, but 53 is kind of wide open as well. And I think she's going to look good, and I expect her to do very well. I mean, I don't think she's giving up much in terms of size or in terms of strength. I think she was big for 50, and maybe she just feels that for her optimal performance, she wants to be at 53, or is toying with like, let me see, it's early in the quad. I'm in this quad. Let's see how I feel, how I do at 53, because I think it's going to be tough to make for 4 years. I'm ultimately going to have to make that transition. So let's see. And then maybe she, doesn't do as well as she wants, or felt small and says, you know what, I'm going to have to commit to 50, or maybe she feels really good at 53 and says, I can either, grow into the weight. I don't even think she needs to grow into the weight. I don't think she'd be a massively undersized 53, to tell you the truth.
Here's what's interesting about 53 is you have Dom Parrish, who's a world champion. She was the Olympian in 2024. We don't know what she's going to do, so she's not entered at the U.S. Open as of right now. She could come back for the World Team Trials and
Sure.
compete in that. We know Haley Agello will not be at the U.S. Open, but she has said that she will be at the World Team Trials. So you have some quality competition that will not be at the U.S. Open. So this is a real opportunity to make Final X and then leave it up to those two, because only one of those two, Agello or Dom Parrish, if she comes back, can get that Final X spot. So that really leaves some opportunity at 53 for another wrestler to make it to the World Team Trials finals.
Well, yeah. I mean, I don't know. I certainly don't really know what Paris is going to do. I believe pretty strongly that Agella will, be at the trials. But for all you know, maybe Agella doesn't. She takes a year off and goes next year. I know she's not done with wrestling. She may not be at the trials. I don't know. I really don't have a great read on either of them. So we'll see. But a lot of times you plan out how this is going to work, and it just doesn't work the way people go up or down in weight after the U.S. Open and trials. So you don't really know what's going to happen. I think all you can do right now, I mean, this is the best thing. I think this is a good tournament to go into in the weight classes that don't have somebody declared sitting in the finals, where the mentality should be something to the effect of, okay, I'm entering the U.S. Open. This is just a step to making a senior world team. So if I lose, let's look at what I did right or wrong. Where do I think I am? What adjustments can I make to get ready for the World Team Trials? I'll have another shot. And if I win, okay, now I'm sitting in Final X, but this is just a step, and I haven't done anything yet. I won the U.S. Open, and now I got to keep my preparation going, the training, try to still say, what did I do right that allowed me to win this tournament? What do I still need to work on? Because people are going to come blazing from the World Team Trials with momentum in a Final X as well. So the U.S. Open is but a step in a brutal process. So, I think the best way is to kind of relax and not try to make it too big, because nothing is concluded with this tournament.
53 and 55 are interesting to me because you don't maybe talk about them as much as some of the others, but I just think there's a lot of things at play, especially at 53, where you see it's kind of wide open with Felicity Taylor, Sage Mortimer, Ikei, some other names in there. 55, it looks like Jakara is going to go down to 55, although, again, her famous words, I don't know where I'm going to go, so we don't know where she'll end up. Vilascusa looked good last year at the World Team Trials and had a good run there and got into a medal match at the World Championship. So she may be getting better. So I think 53, 55, look at those because I think some good things can happen there.
Yeah, I mean, and we also have world champs at both weights, right? Paris at 53, Jakara is the world champ at 55. I mean, yeah, and then you have these other athletes. They're both very, good weight classes for the U.S. where we've won medals, but there's some things that are uncertain, and you just don't know. I think I've heard from multiple people that Vilascusa's looked great in the room recently, and although she didn't win that world medal, she very well should have. But I think you could either take a negative attitude about that, oh, I didn't win a medal, I should have won, or say, hey, I'm good enough to win medals at the world level. And I think that's probably her mindset. And I've heard she's looked great. So, it'll be interesting to see how we come out of those weights, and, where Jakara goes ultimately.
Japan just had their age level World Team Trials and just a few takeaways.
Golden Slam, which is the Yui Sasaki, so the Olympics, U17, U20, U23. They call it a Golden Slam.
And Senior Worlds.
Yeah, it seems. Yeah, Golden Slam, all 5 of those.
Golden Slam. And so there's been 2 of those that have won that. Fujinami could add her name to the list. It looks like, just reading the press release about this, that Fujinami looks good at 57. I like what she says, and it's just really the mark of a champion, that she wants to work on things, that she actually went out there and worked on things where she was deficient. I think she even mentioned she's not good from an underhook. She likes to shoot from space. She worked on that, still dominated. So I just like the way she thinks, that she's putting herself in situations that will test her, and I think she's going to come out better for it.
Yeah, and she kind of has a build that looks like very slim and tall, and she's filling out now. She's maturing, so she looks all of 57 and then some. I'm not convinced, but she's talking about the first Japanese woman to win, first woman to win back-to-back Olympic titles in 2 different weight classes. The script isn't over yet. She may win one at 62. We'll see what happens. In 8 years, she looks like she may even grow to that. So she evidently just murdered people and looks really good. But, she will have to beat the only person that ran the quad in any style, Sakurai. So she's beaten her before, though. in college. So we'll see what happens.
Star on the rise, Yu Katsumi. She will represent Japan at 49 kilograms at the U17 World Championships. If you remember last year, she wrestled Morgan Turner, who is a U17 World Champion at 46 kilograms. Turner and Katsumi are both at 49 again this year. Katsumi won that by tech last year. Presumably, you would think that they're going to meet up at some point at the U17 World Championships later this year, but do we have a new star emerging at 50 kilograms with Yu Katsumi? We'll see.
Yeah, absolutely. She's on like one of those, Japanese-esque win streaks, the one where you haven't lost since junior high school kind of thing. And it's not like they're wrestling slugs in their domestic and international stuff. So she's supposed to be very good. And obviously the sheer fact that she tech Turner last year, who was the defending world champ, tells me all I need to know. She's going to be very solid. And then on the radar, who's only U15, the sister of Sakurai, who's just doesn't lose either, coached by, the same person that coached Kyuka. So at 65 and coaches Sakurai. So, she'll be a good one as well. So Japan, the youngins are coming up, as are ours. As an aside, just final thought, it'll be interesting to see where, some of our younger ones as they're moving up, Carly Brooks, Everest Lidecker. I hope I got that one right this time. And among others that are starting to wrestle the first kind of senior tournaments, a major competition.
Make sure you either watch or get to the US Open. This is a blast. This is so fun. The World Team Trials process is so much fun because it lasts a little while. You have the US Open, World Team Trials, then Final X. So there's 3 layers to it. Then you go into some of the rankings tournaments, and then you have the Senior World Championships. This is what it's all about. This is when you see the interviews and they're talking about, I want to be a world and Olympic champion. This is the start of it. Support it.
Let's go.